All right, so today we have a new series of recording of podcast episodes, and it's been something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and it is to really understand the it's really to understand the investor market and understand the different generations that we have got and what their thoughts are. Because the problem is that in our industry, we have got a lot of people that sort of see investors as greedy. We see that because, the housing market is going really well if you own a house and not so good if you don't. And I think in society, there's sort of a bit of a clear divide we're maybe seeing between high income and low income people. So today I am so excited to have Eli and Hari joining me for the very first recording of this generational episode. So guys, thank you for trusting me to come on today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Now, let's do just a little bit of an intro so people can get an idea of your background. So, Eli, we'll just start with you. If you can just sort of let us know your age and working, uni, etc., just to get a bit of a guide.
So I'm 25. I've just finished my law degree. So I've been a student for the past 7 years, on or off, taking some time to work full time and travel. I've never rented before. I've been fortunate enough to be able to live at home, and that's between my parents' house and also living with Harry's parents. And now where we're living is in Harry's apartment, which he purchased almost a year ago. So yeah.
Excellent. And what about you, Hari? Your credentials?
So I'm Harry. I am 25 as well, and I've been working in the planning industry for the past few years. And yeah, so I bought this place a year ago, and yeah, excited to chat.
Excellent. Can we also just get a little clarification? Your parents, do they both do they own their homes or do they rent their homes? Just so we've got that idea of what that next generation looks like.
So my parents own their home, as well as Harry's parents. Yeah.
Okay, so from that, I would sort of say that you haven't really been brought up in families where their norm is renting. You know, some people it's normal to rent, and would that be a fair comment to say?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose comparing to friends who have grown up in families that have rented, I do think it seems like it's a very different experience of growing up, particularly if you're moving house to house as opposed to having sort of the one family home. And obviously as well, I think when you are renting as a family, there are different stresses with that as well. And speaking to some friends, I know that it sort of has translated differently in their lives, whether they've grown up in families that have rented or not. But growing up in families who have always owned their own property, it's never, I was never aware of like a housing crisis or any of that, I suppose, until I became an adult.
Well, it's probably only because it's more of a housing crisis now.
Yes,
as
that's
we're
true.
getting older. Your groups of friends, would they be similar to you, or your group? What are they typically doing on that, like just on average?
Yeah, so I guess a lot of my friends especially from university, a number of them actually just in the past year or so bought homes. Yeah, so but probably the vast majority are just renting, and then some are still living at home. So a mix.
A real mix, yeah. So not a majority rules with one or the other.
Yeah.
The people that have bought, are you finding your generation, do they just save really, really well, or do they have the luxuries, I guess, of parents providing equity or things like that? What sort of what happens in your friend group?
I think it's a combination of factors, but I think predominantly it's people who do have family support, particularly to contribute to whatever deposit they're making on a house. And aside from that, it might be inheritance as well, if they've received some inheritance to put towards that. Otherwise, I think it is just probably generally a little bit of luck as well when entering the property market. I would say, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess some people, like a lot of us and a lot of my friends, we started working full time and remained living at home with our parents. So I think by doing that, you can save money and it's always not always the easiest, and not everyone has that opportunity. But to rent and earn, even a beginner professional salary and to save for home would be incredibly difficult.
Yeah. A lot of older people, I hear them talking about, well, I am one of those older people, but I don't say this, but people that are older than me, they say that young people, all they want is the new 4x2, and they don't have stepping stones for the housing market. Have you seen that in your age group, where they have wanted or been attracted to the big 4x2 and not wanting anything but that?
I think there's definitely something to be said about that. There's two sort of things I would say. And firstly, it's that people are living with their parents for longer, and particularly going to university. So what that means is if you're 25, 26 and you're entering the property market, you most likely might be at a point where you're starting to consider like having a family and having kids, at least in the foreseeable future. And if you're wanting to do something as big as purchasing your first home, a lot of people that I've spoken to are wanting to buy somewhere that has land and property and the backyard, and that looks like something that's familiar to them and a place that they grew up in. So because of that, I think a lot of people are probably more adverse to the idea of apartment living or living in kind of higher density areas but in smaller places. And then also with that, because of the familiarity of growing up in your traditional house with a backyard and whatever not, a lot of people don't like the idea of living in an apartment. So I've got one friend at the moment who's looking to buy, and she's really against the idea of living in an apartment, even if it means that it facilitates a better lifestyle for her. And that's because she's just not familiar, I think, with the idea, and she doesn't see it as like a good thing, particularly if she's wanting to have kids in the future. I think because of how difficult it is as well, owning a property and getting into the property market, their eyes are set on something bigger than what would otherwise be like an apartment or a unit or whatever not.
And then I guess that would also be more long term as well. Like they're not.
Yeah, people are thinking long term as opposed to short term, like somewhere that they can have for the next 5, 6, 7 years or whatever, as opposed to the next year or two, given that it's such a massive undertaking and whatever not.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? That they're thinking that they don't want to move again, so let's just do it once and do it properly, and then we're sorted. You guys are in a little unit. Is this a stepping stone for you, or do you guys just love the apartment style?
I think we do. I like apartment living. I like living in a more urban format, but I think that's probably in the minority. And it's a one by one. It's not a forever place, but the next while.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about in the next 5 years or so probably purchasing a house together, especially once I start working full time and I'm earning a salary and everything as well. But yeah, so we have seen this as a stepping stone, and also a way to avoid going into the rental market as well. So moving in here, at still being a student, it was still difficult for me to go into the rental market, and it wasn't something I'd be able to do. But with Harry purchasing this property, it's meant like we can kind of have that life that we envisioned for ourselves with avoiding the rental market and saving money for the future. So it really is kind of an investment long term into the future for us. And I think we do still see it as a bit of a stepping stone, but it's, I think, a place that we'll probably be in for the next like 5 years or so at least.
It's stepping stones, but as options, like you're going to have so many options with that unit, whether you want to do short stay or have it just as a base, or lots and lots of options, or if you sell it to get a deposit for a bigger place. Would you, and apologies if you haven't had these conversations between yourselves yet, so we can just nut them out online, but would you ever consider, like, if you were like, we want to buy a house eventually, would you consider buying one and renting it out? Or does the idea of doing that not sit well with you? Would you only buy it if you were going to be living in it?
I don't really see any desire in that, at least not right now.
Nah.
I think it is very much as well about like, that is a values driven sort of thing as well. I think we see how difficult and problematic the housing market is right now. And I think the idea of using housing to generate wealth for us is something that makes us both quite uncomfortable. So it's not something that we would ideally want to do in the future, I don't think. Would you say? Yeah.
Partly it's also like I think it isn't really, unless there are people who can own a property and rent it out and do it in a perfectly reasonable way, and good on them, and I agree with that. But I think it's kind of a lifestyle as well. Like it's not really something I've ever
Wanted
had
to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna dig in a little bit more here because this is like for me the juicy bit, because you said that you felt uncomfortable about, or the idea of creating wealth from that, or it's sort of like wealth from somebody else's hardship in a way, maybe, that makes you sort of uncomfortable. But and then Harry, you mentioned how, like, there's some people that do have a desire to buy and then and do it sort of in a good, a good way, or in a better way. What do you mean by that? Like, what would be considered and this is like a place to please be as open as possible with no judgment, because in your mind, is it that maybe rent should only sort of just cover the expenses? There should be a limit to what people can get for rent. What is the part there that that you feel would be more ethical, I guess, is the best way of saying it?
Yeah, I guess it's something that is so complex, and that there are so many different ways of doing it, and that, like, to be honest, like, I don't blame anyone for doing anything. It's like the system we're in. Like,
Yeah.
this is like the system is kind of built to do these things, and it's a very good way of earning money, just generally, particularly when there's so much demand right now. Like, to me, like, I think you can be a completely reasonable landlord and do all that. But personally, I'm less concerned about, making money off people or whatever, and just like, it's not really something that interests me at all. I prefer to make
Yeah.
money through other means that are beneficial to society, rather than just extraction.
Yeah. No, I love the conversation. I mean, I do, you may or may not, but try and do a lot with the philanthropic community. And so the problem was that when I talked about this on the TikTok platform, I still got crucified, because there were people out there that were like, don't try and make it all sound like, polish it like you're doing, those clients are doing a good thing. And I was really offended, because I was like, they are actually doing a good thing, because there's a lot of homes out there where clients maybe are going into a nursing home and they're not allowed to rent out their homes for more than a certain amount. We have clients that have only bought the property for their adult children when they're going through uni, and so it's paid off, and the property was purchased for the purpose of their children, and now their children have used it. They don't feel the need that they need to take anything more off it. You've got people that are just in philanthropic in nature, and then you've got people that that have got a property that's sitting vacant and they maybe can't sell it till next financial year. So there's lots of reasons. So what we do is we reach out to these clients and try and find them and say, if you've got a home that you can afford to rent out between the sort of anywhere between 300 and 500, normally 400 and 500 per week, which is generally about 30% under market rate, then let us know, because we'll match you with a family from one of the refuges that we work with. And then it allows them 12 months to find their feet, get into the rental market, get their history, and just get back into sort of independent living. And then they can get back into employment, get a job, finish their study, and then go out sort of into the big mean world and then pay market. But to me, that's really great investing. And I think the more that we talk about those options, it allows people to have the opportunity to invest where they're going to get the benefit of the capital growth, but not necessarily of the cash flow growth. So that's sort of like, we've got 20 properties in that market, in that portfolio at the moment under our books. And then in turn, we just charge a cost price for management fee. So no one's making anything off it. we're not making money off it. The owner's not making any money, you know, off it per se, and they're getting the benefit. So like for me, that's good investing.
I think that's really good. And but the thing I would say in terms of like what makes me more so uncomfortable, and I do understand that majority of property investors are your kind of like everyday Australians who are purchasing property to secure their financial futures and the futures for their kids and whatever not. But I suppose the biggest problem I have is when you have property investors who come in and buy what would otherwise be the most affordable kind of low cost homes. And I suppose thinking about like, say, where we are currently financially, if we were to buy property in the next 10 years or so, it probably would be like the most affordable property we could buy. And so I think that's probably like my issue with property investors more so lies with that. And I think like there definitely are altruistic things you can do, like you've mentioned, when it comes to investment. And it's not, I don't think we should blame individuals and investors specifically for the problems that exist within our systems. I think that really falls on the government and policy making. But that in terms of what makes me uncomfortable, it's more so that like, would I be purchasing homes that would otherwise be affordable for other people just purely to increase my asset pool? I'm not sure if that's something I'd want to do in the future.
Yeah, I mean, and the government tried to step in. This is a problem when the government interferes too much and interferes that natural cycle. We have issues. So, like with the first home buyers grant, you know, they've done that, but all that's done is it hasn't actually really helped. It hasn't helped the first home buyers. It's actually
increases
pushed prices
demand.
up. Yeah.
I think, and like really when it comes to just talking about this housing crisis generally, where my issues really lie, it's not with property investment necessarily. It's more so with just, I think we need higher density living. We need to get rid of NIMBYism as well. We need people to be, particularly like you talk about the older generation, but really it's anyone who owns property. We need people to be thinking in more of a collective than an individualistic mindset, and to be thinking, you know, if they have development proposals in their area for higher density living, I think you should be open to that rather than think, well, is that going to affect, you know, the afternoon sun in my backyard, or how will that affect the peace and tranquility of the area? And whilst they're completely valid concerns, and because property is so expensive, people are concerned about the value of their property and retaining that value, we need to sort of shift to a more collectivist mindset of, you know, do we need to sacrifice a little bit of something for the greater good of everyone so that everyone has a chance to be able to enter the property market? And that's sort of when it comes to talking about like the housing crisis, I don't think property investors really are like the problem necessarily. I think it's more so encouraging a mindset that allows for high density, and also governments pushing for that as well in particular areas.
Yeah. Now I know you got rice on, so if you do need to pop up to go that rice, that's totally
fine. No, that's okay. Hopefully it's not making too much noise.
Yeah, no, it's not making noise. It's just if you do need to jump up, that's absolutely fine. So then, I mean, I think I read somewhere, and don't quote me on this, but I feel like I read somewhere that WA has like the lowest amount of 1 and 2 bedroom units available in our market. Like it might only make up 20% of our market or something like that, where over in Melbourne and Sydney, it makes up a much higher portion. And what we're seeing here is that it's the 1 and 2 bedroom units that are getting absolutely massive home opens. Prices are pushed up. We actually don't need more houses. We need more 1 and 2 bedroom units. That's what we need.
Yeah, when Harry was looking for a place he was essentially looking for 1x1s, and it was very difficult to come across. I mean, even in this complex, I don't know, there's probably not many.
Yeah, well, I guess it's like, especially in Perth, it's like Perth is very different. We're much older. Well, our housing stock hasn't developed near as much as other cities, particularly in a more, you know, high density form. And it's a bit of an unfortunate scenario where, as it's come increasingly bad, the potential to develop in a high density has gotten kind of worse since COVID. You know, like I work in the planning sector, and I see these things all the time. Like by nature of Perth, and you know, the demographics, the people migrating here, the nature of being so isolated, it hampers a lot of these things, particularly high density development. And like Ellie was saying before, I think a lot of people move to Perth for a low density lifestyle. A lot of young people leave Perth for a high density lifestyle. Um,
True.
it has a big pull factor, particularly, especially, you see people, particularly, British migrants
Yeah.
coming to Perth for that lifestyle.
Yeah,
So
they're all north and want those big houses.
the demand is wanting something slightly different, and people are being pushed to accept, 1 and 2 bed apartments. But I don't think naturally that would be the demand. But partly that's what happens when you live in a city.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about, again, might be a conversation you haven't had, apologies, we have to have that together on a public forum. But do you think about, like, do you plan having children, and do you think about like options for them, i.e. if you were to, have a house, would you keep the unit for children potentially?
I think we haven't really had too many direct conversations about that. In terms of this apartment, we would probably sell it. Well, Harry would sell it in order to be able to purchase the next home. And we have talked about, we're looking the other day at just like what was kind of in the area in terms of townhouses and 2x2s and things like that. And I think it is definitely something we're open to in terms of selling this place and then living still in a high density area, but in a smaller apartment or a townhouse or something like that. So I don't know. I don't think this would be. We also probably wouldn't be at the stage where retaining this property would be that beneficial. We shouldn't be thinking that long term, like in 20 years' time. I don't think either. But in terms of, using it to kind of as financial security for the future, I don't think it's something Harry would want to do. Would you say?
I almost certainly would be selling this.
Yeah. So do you ever sort of like, I'm in an age where there are so many people, and actually you'll see in the market, so many people are looking also at buying. So not only have you got first home buyers, you've got investors, and then somewhat investors, but people basically looking for a property to secure something for when their children are older, and they'll just rent it out to their children. Is that something that you worry about, or you're sort of not? It's too far away to have for that thought?
Yeah, it's too far away.
I think
way too far away.
I think it's way too far away.
Yeah, and I think to afford to buy anything in the future, particularly as we see the market is going, I don't think it's even a possibility to retain this.
And I don't think it's even it's not even, we can't be thinking about that either, because we won't be able to afford that. We'll be able to afford probably in 5 or so years to purchase a property, but beyond that, it will depend so much as to, where our lives take us and what kind of incomes we end up on and things like that. So there are just way too many factors at play. And I think probably a lot of that why people are purchasing homes as financial security for their kids, I think a lot of it is being very insecure and fearful as to the future. The housing crisis, started in early 2000s, and it's still going. We've had different pressure points and different issues at particular times.
It's worse right now.
It's just a lot worse right now.
Perth. Other cities, it's bad for the past
But it's sort of it's been bad for 20 odd years. It's sort of but people have managed to get by and figure it out. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of solutions actually get presented in the future and are effective, but I don't know whether that will happen. We'll have to wait and see.
But you're right. We are acting in fear, because fear that our children won't be able to find anything. Also, I think we probably think about it more because we've actually got the kids currently living in our houses, and we're like, hell, we don't want this to be on forever. We want them to go move out eventually. That's right. And maybe, if and when you have children, it might be the same. It might be when you've got those little gremlins in the house that you go, oh yeah, no, we're going to start thinking about their future, because as soon as they turn 18.
And to be fair as well, I have friends who weren't able to live with their parents because that wasn't something that their parents could provide for them when they finished school. And so they did have to go into the rental market. And now they are in positions where they don't think they'll ever be able to afford a house. They'll be stuck in the rental market forever, because since they were 18, they've had to live like, and pay rent. And it's something they can sort of only barely afford. So I don't think by any means it's wrong to be thinking about your financial future in that way and to be insecure, because you do see it with people who are forced into the rental market at an early age because their parents aren't either able to, assist them or have them live at home. So I think it is very valid to be having those considerations.
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? Like it's like to feel like you don't have, like, here we are talking about all these options, which is really a lot of privilege. You've got the option of buying, and if you can't buy, you stay
Definitely.
exactly where you are, or you
Yeah.
can live with parents who have got that stable home. Like, it's so
Definitely.
much privilege. I can't imagine what it would be like to literally have no other options. I mean, that's where
Yeah.
that's stressful.
Yeah, and it definitely, I think, will only just, as it already has done, increase inequality in the future. And it's even like it's friends who still, went to private schools and grew up in, middle class, kind of middle income families, but who still are at a point where they don't have that inheritance. Their parents don't have disposable wealth that they're able to assist them in buying a home. So I do think it is really the very privileged who are able to have everything work out for them, being able to live at home and save money, have parents who might be able to make a small contribution to their deposit or whatever not, and sort of some security to fall back on. But there's a lot of people, even who have grown up like quite privileged, who actually don't have that. So, but I do think like it's very sad because it will just only increase inequality in the future between, depending on how much wealth you have.
Now, I'm going to finish off with a really, it's a tough question, and so I just would love to hear your throwback with the question. While we can maybe feel uncomfortable about, property and making money off that, I would pose the question that you have both been very fortunate that you have had parents who have invested and had made money potentially through property, which has had a benefit to you guys. So does that change your thought, or does that change your thought then? You see where I'm going? Like the thought of then being sort of like not comfortable with wealth, but then that's sort of what has helped position you guys. Like, what's your comeback on your thought on that question or statement?
Yeah, well, I think it's a fair thing to say, and it's it's I don't think yeah, I'm just thinking right now of how to answer that.
Well, also we have to keep in mind when our parents purchase properties, the income to, purchase price ratio was completely different. So it was way easier for a lot of people to get into the property market who are around our parents' ages. And because of the complete rise in prices as well, it's something that they've been able to use as a tool and make money off, because there's been such a rapid increase. I think in terms of like, I don't know if this is answering your question or not, but for example, to give the hypothetical of, okay, what if we do own properties in the future and we do rent them out at what we think are, really reasonable costs and whatever not to people, and we think we're doing a really altruistic thing, that's great. But property investment doesn't lend itself to naturally being altruistic and being philanthropic. I think it's great if you can make it that way, but typically it won't be. People enter into property investment purely for wealth, and that's okay. It's for their own financial security, their kids' futures, and whatever not. And that's a really valid reason to invest in property. But I don't think that you can just assume that in property investment is a completely like altruistic thing or anything.
And then if I think about it as well, like this is making an assumption, but I guess the generation like of your parents, they weren't buying investments for the financial, the wealth or the benefit. They might have been doing it for like or specifically in our area, they did it because their kids were at uni. We've got a lot of farmers, and yeah, if your parents never had that that thought that I'm going to buy property to make money, because they weren't getting those returns. It went down, actually went down quite a bit, I think in 2014. So it was about the security more than the wealth of it. And maybe that's the difference, where this investor market is more about the wealth as opposed to, what your parents were. So maybe, I guess that is probably how we can sort of think about that, even though, yes, you've got the benefit of it, that was never the intention at the start. So maybe it's sort of, from what we sort of talked about, it's really coming down to the intention more than the actual act of buying investment properties, maybe.
I guess the thing is, if you're in the system you're working with, that's completely reasonable. It's completely reasonable to act in these certain ways. I just think that much more should be done to try assist the other end of the spectrum. Because, for most of the past 30 years, it's mainly been for investing, which is completely reasonable because you're creating more housing, you're doing all these things, but to a certain extent at the detriment of a lot of other people. And I think it's just like a bit of a cycle where, when you buy a house, you want price to go up. Yeah. Price goes up by continuing this cycle. So why would you buy a house and then want price to go down? It's completely reasonable, but that's why, the governments, it would be such a hard thing. Your voter base is people who own homes. You need to have a sustainable future. So you need to try incentivize some of these aspects, but you basically can't have house prices go down. It's just so unpopular. So you have to kind of get some kind of stagnation to kind of slight increase, hopefully, but that's very difficult, even electorally.
Yeah, we have to work with the system we're currently in. And there's no simple solution to how you fix this housing crisis and how property investors can do better. I'm not entirely sure. I think kind of trying to have altruistic kind of values and whatever not, particularly when it comes to when you're thinking about hiking up rent prices and whatever not. I think that's definitely something that property investors can be aware of. But look, I understand, especially when it's so difficult to get into the property market as it is. Once you're in it and you understand how much wealth there is to be made from it, it's so easy to just exist in this very single-minded mindset where you just see the potential to make wealth from it. And I think really, at the end of the day, we just need property investors and people who own property to shift their mindset from that and be thinking more about the collective generally.
I just think that shifting mindset is not achievable. That's just a made up thing to make people
it's a bit too woo-woo.
It's a fluff on the end of the spectrum. Even if a small number of people do this, it's gonna make barely any difference. There needs to be fundamental change. So it's it makes a few people feel good, but naturally humans work in this way. The system is the way it is. There needs to be changes with the system, not with individuals.
Yeah.
Well, I have loved chatting to you both today. Thank you so much for your time. And I just think what you talked about, you guys are a natural on the podcast. We should do a whole series. I bet I get people say, can we have those two back on again?
I love podcasting. This is so fun. I love talking.
But, this is the only way to, conversations about these topics, whether they're, whichever way they sort of sway towards, are just really, really important, because the more we can understand where different people come from, different ages, different statuses with home ownership investors, then you can really get an idea of, okay, that's the way they feel. Oh, if that's the way, then I can help them with this. If you don't have those conversations, you don't know what you're trying to help with. So I'm incredibly grateful for you guys. I'm really interested to see how the different generations go. So like I said, someone in their 30s, someone in their 40s, 50s, 60s and 70s. I'm just really excited to hear how each generation has seen it, seen the market, and how they've maybe taken advantage or suffered, not suffered, but don't know what the word is to use that's appropriate, but yeah, how it, it's been a detriment to them. So I'm just so excited to have these conversations. Like I said, it's been a podcast I've been wanting to do for a while, a series. I think people are really going to love the discussion. You guys, thank you for being honest and for being my first guests with it. And if anyone who is listening has any questions or feedback, please shoot them through to me, and keep an ear out for the next generational chat. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Cheers.